work and maybe even have more children in our care than normal. So thank you all for everything you're doing to keep children safe. Our staff have put together a slide deck that we're going to start using for the call. We're going to try it out today to try to, that way we'll have it and we'll have all the information we've given and we can save it and keep it updated for you all. So Becky, if you will advance to the next slide, I'm going to give COVID updates. As of this morning, we have 1,916 licensed programs that are open with the capacity to serve 162,995 children. Not going to read everything. You can see how many children and staff have tested positive that were in a facility since last March. Still have some of those numbers going up, but things are fairly stable right now with both openings and closures as well as positive cases. The funding update, we did utilize all of the CARES funding, and I apologize, I see that there's a typo. That is $41 million. So apologize for that typo. I just happened to catch that and didn't catch it when I sent it to Becky earlier. Thank you, Becky. But that funding was spent, and that was from last March or April until about December, early January of 2021. We had the second relief package, which is called the Cash Act. I call it the second relief package that child care received funding, and that was in December, and we got the notice in February, and we have utilized 15.3 million out of the 119 million so far. And I know there's some updates from other staff on that. And then just as a reminder, because I know there's a lot of changes getting ready to happen and there's been lots of discussion, but I want to make sure that folks in our world know, because the Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Education is funded through the Child Care Federal Development Block Grant, we are required to follow pandemic requirements, whether our state has anything in place or not. It's a federal requirement, and it was written into all of these acts for this funding. So we have updated our pandemic requirements. We have made a few modifications, and I know that staff are going to present a couple of those changes, but please make sure that you're checking those. It's pretty much the same as what we've been doing since last March. We try to keep things very close to the same. As we go forward, there may be adjustments. The way the law has been written, it is if our state doesn't have a mandate, then we have to follow the Centers for Disease Control. We want to make sure that we're trying to mirror what we've been doing so we don't create more confusion for you all. So where we can start to lift things, we will. We did lift transportation so that you can go back to normal transportation. But I'll let staff update there, but please pay attention and monitor that. We will be updating it on this call every 2 weeks if we have made a change. But just wanted to make sure you're aware, we will still have to do screenings when children are coming into the facility, even though through at least the federal emergency. Once the federal government lifts it, we will be able to stop. But until the federal, even though the state may lift it, this may get real confusing for you all. The governor has announced some adjustments, and there may be a lift of the mask mandate at the end of the month if the cases continue to go down. That doesn't change anything for us in early childhood because we are federally funded. We have, and the feds are still in a federal emergency. They have not lifted theirs yet. So we have to continue to follow those, but we will be monitoring it closely, and we will try to lift things as we can, but just wanted you guys to be aware of that because I've had some questions about it. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any concerns about that, but we cannot take their 41 million and their 119 million in any future funding without following their mandates, and we can't risk that. So I will shift Becky to the next person.
Hey, you guys. Okay, so like Tanya was talking about, I just wanted to give you a quick update of one thing that we do know has changed. And you guys will remember in our pandemic requirements, the section, it was number 6, still is number 6, where we had some leeway with quarantining on what would be required. And so like you see on the screen there are still some requirements actually of who will not have to quarantine. So you'll see that in 6A and 6B. But what did change is the part that said you had to be within 3 months of receiving the final vaccine, that part has been removed. And so now when you go out on our website and you look at the pandemic requirements, you will see that the folks that don't have to quarantine will be the ones that meet both fully vaccinated with at least 2 weeks since their final dose, and they've remained asymptomatic if they did come in contact with somebody who has been exposed. So that is the update we have for you guys right now. Like Tanya said, if we get any other information from our federal partners or from the Arkansas Department of Health, we will be sure to update the pandemic requirements to follow suit. Those will be posted as always on our website, and we'll talk about it at our next provider call as well. Thanks, Tanya.
And I think Nora has updates, so we'll pass it to Nora Fawcett regarding regulatory checks.
Hey, Nora, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. So welcome everyone and good afternoon. This is with regards to your consent forms. One of the major issues that we're having is people are still uploading the wrong consent forms. So this, what you see here, is the correct consent form. Now, I also want to bring to light that when you notarize a document, you have got to make sure that the applicant is signing in front of a notary. One of the issues that we're having is the notary will have one date, but the other person, the applicant, is going to have a different date. When you sign in front of a notary, the date has got to match. Please keep that in mind, because that's what's telling us that you did sign this form in front of a notary. Now, let's say, for example, you did the the notary. Let me backtrack a little bit. The form that requires the notary pertains to the state regulatory check. That's the one that needs to be notarized. Now, the third page pertains to the FBI. Let's say, for example, you did go in front of a notary and you did sign the one that requires a notary. However, you did not sign the FBI in front of the notary. That is okay. What matters is the notary has to witness your signature on the state regulatory check. So just want to make that clear. So that's one of the issues that we're having. The dates are not matching, or the names also. When you submit a consent form, it needs to match the name that you are putting into the NIC system. For example, some people's name is Patricia. Let's just go with Patricia Fawcett, okay? But some people's name may just be Pat. Pat is an abbreviation for Patricia. So we have to make sure that you use the correct legal name. If your name is Patricia, please use Patricia and do not use Pat. Same like Jonathan. If it's Jonathan, use Jonathan and not John, unless your name is Pat or John. So those are some of the issues that we are having with the consent forms. So please pay close attention to that form, because it is very important that it is filled out correctly. Another issue is some people may not have the capability to upload all 3 forms, because remember, what we are asking for is we're asking for one PDF that will contain three forms. So that's a consent form in its entirety. I understand that some providers do not have that capability, but there is what they call a Scan Guru app that you can download through your phone, take a picture, it'll convert into a PDF, and you can actually combine those 3 forms into one PDF. So please take a look at that. And I just discovered that just a couple of weeks ago, so I got excited, and I'm really wanting to share this with everyone, because this is also one of the main reasons that we cannot start the adjudicating process, because we either have 1 form or 2 forms, but we're always missing part of the consent form. Remember, it is 3 pages. This app is called Scan Guru app, and this should be able to help you combine all three and submit them as one. Okay. So that's what I have for the consent forms. And then I do want to remind everyone also then, for those people that are actually doing the hands-on, I know directors, we love you all, we do, but we actually want people that are doing the hands-on when it comes to submitting the information in the INA system, or also known as NIGAR. So we want the individuals that are actually doing the work to attend this training, because they're the ones that are submitting the information, and we want to make sure they're doing it right. We want to give them as much training as possible. So on Monday, April 5th, we're going to have another training that's going to literally walk them step by step. And then, of course, afterwards, if they have questions, they're more than welcome to reach out to us. So please make sure, let the individuals know, the ones that are the hands-on, let them know to participate in this meeting on the 5th of April.
Ashlyn, could you take that question from Stacy? They have high school students. It's really about volunteers, but if you guys could answer that question for everyone.
Yes, ma'am. So the regulation reads that anyone who has routine contact with the children, anyone who has routine contact with children would need to do the regulatory checks. If you'll give me just 2 seconds, and we can move on, Tanya, if you want, but I'll put it in the chat, the actual regulation number, so we can look it up, because that's a great question that a lot of times people will have. So I'll pop it in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. Becky, if you can advance and let Jay share her information.
Good morning, everyone. We have 7,004 essential worker approved applications, and that is very exciting. Our funding is trickling all throughout the state of Arkansas, so that's really, really good to hear that we're serving children and families. I just want to give y'all some minor updates on essential worker and vouchers. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you so much. So right now we have processed all maintenance payments with vendor numbers that were on file. If you were not set up as a vendor, you should have received an email from my team that would let you know the required documentation that is needed to move forward to becoming a vendor to receive funding from the state. Anything related to COVID, we want to direct you back, guys, to our website. That's where we'll provide any updates or changes that may happen or transpire before our next meeting. So make sure that you guys are visiting that site for more information. It's on our DCC ECE COVID webpage, and you just go under COVID information. So another thing I want you guys to do is remind your parents that when they receive the authorization form, letting them know that they're approved, please look down if they're assigned a caseworker or specialist that is working their case. This will be the person that the parents would need to contact to get any specific information, maybe status update or submit a form. Always refer them back to that authorization approval notice that will let them know who their caseworker is. And another thing that I wanted to bring up, a lot of people are calling, or we're receiving emails and everybody is saying, hey, I got one lump sum of payment. That may be maintenance, that may be supplemental, your regular voucher payments. So we encourage you guys to do a billing review. Once you run your billing review, you will click all in process, and this will let you guys know exactly where your payments is coming from. Also online, you can we have a form that shows you how to review your remittance on our DCC ECE COVID website. So you guys, I wanted to make sure that you had some contacts. Sometimes it's difficult when you're trying to email and call a lot of different people, and sometimes it feels like you're getting a runaround, but hopefully this can help you guys. So for supplemental payments, if you have any questions pertaining to that, you would contact Ashley Green. Her email and phone number is listed. For billing questions, anything related to billing, you can contact Patricia Johnson. Her email and her phone number is listed. For essential worker, maybe status updates, or if you don't know who your caseworker is, Brandy Ishman would be the one you contact. Her email and phone number is listed above. And for any deep cleaning or maintenance questions, reach out to Rachel Matcham, and her email and her phone number is listed. So you guys, these are people that is available to help you. If you do not know who to contact, just know that any one of these ladies can help you or direct you to the proper person. That's all the updates I have, Tanya. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay, and thanks, Betty, for putting in information on that question. There is a question for or about essential workers. The parents are going to get the date of approval to the date that the authorization will end. And just so that everyone knows, we are keying essential worker families now through June 30th. All essential worker families are being keyed through June 30th. I have had some parents reach out to me about what will happen after that. So we anticipate we'll be able to extend those. It depends on how many families we add between now and June. If we had an avalanche of families, that would mean we might use the funding up faster and wouldn't be able to extend it. But we anticipate that we'll be able to extend these, possibly even through the end of the year. So, but we have to wait and see how many new families are added. We have to manage the funding. So at this point, they're on there through June. As for the amounts, Jay, you may be able to answer that. I'm not aware that we've ever notified families the amount or the rate that we pay. That's really the arrangement. You know, the rates that we have are established through reviewing the rates by providers and creating that. So I'm not sure that families get that. I think they just get the amount of time that they're authorized. But if you know differently,
That's
Jay
correct.
or Betty, okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you. So they will only know the time frames for that. And I'm just going to go through. It looks like staff are trying to answer questions too. So hang on one second. And Betty answered the one about the birth certificate. Thank you for that. Ashlyn's put in the chat box the information about the regulatory checks and what section of the regs those come from. Supplemental payments, Jay, can you update on that?
I'm sorry, supplemental payments have been keyed for February. Ashley has answered that in the chat.
Thank you.
Begin processing for March payments.
Great, thank you, Ashley. I just didn't get down far enough on the list to see that you had done that. So we have not processed March yet. I'm sure we will start keying those now that February is completed. So a question about the new package that was voted on a couple of weeks ago. Yes, there is additional funding in the new package. We have not received anything official, but I'm aware that there is funding for childcare in that new relief funding. I have seen some projections. I hate to start giving out draft or alleged amounts because in my work, until we have something from the federal authority, we don't have any authority. And until we get appropriation from our legislature to spend, we cannot do anything with that funding. But I can tell you that for childcare, for the national childcare portion, and I'm going to go through the beginning to now so that you can kind of start to think about the amounts. In the very first package, childcare block grant was given $3.5 billion. Arkansas received 41 million or 42 million roughly. Second package that we got in December, childcare got 10 billion and Arkansas received 119 million out of that. This new package is 39 billion. So let me say it again, 39 billion. So Arkansas will get a lot of money. And I'll just leave it there until we have something official. The projections are over $400 million. I will tell you that in the law itself, it does repeat that we have to follow pandemic requirements for health and safety for children, but it does divide out about 40% of whatever Arkansas gets. And I can give you the national number. But 40% roughly will go to essential workers. So I say all that to say that we potentially will be continuing to serve essential worker families for some time. But the remaining funding, and I will tell you that when you start to get money like that, everybody gets interested. So I can tell you already, the governor's office and legislators are already reaching out to me. We will have to have a very detailed plan that will have to be approved by the officials in this state. We will not be doing what we've been doing. So I'm just letting you guys know that I don't anticipate that they're going to let me just do supplemental and maintenance and all of that. I think we're going to be doing big things, and that's a good thing. But I don't know any details yet. And until we get the exact award, it's really hard for us to do anything more than have discussions at this point. So, but yes, we do stand to get a lot of money. It's 39 billion, and the amount that was separated out, I believe, for 15 billion is for essential workers. So out of that 39 billion, 15 billion comes off for essential workers nationally. So whatever Arkansas is, they start to break it down for each state, they will let us know. But roughly, if it's about 40% of it will be for essential workers. And then the remaining amounts will be to help support our child care and early childhood field. And please remember, we have to think about one-time expenses. We cannot think about ongoing expenses, or we're going to really hurt ourselves and cause harm to our field. So we really have to think about things that really are one-time in nature, helping our staff meet education requirements and credentialing. That's a wonderful one-time investment. And I can foresee that being one on the table by legislators and folks. So, but at this point, we could do a lot of speculation. I certainly want to hear from you if you all have ideas about one-time expenses that we might consider. Again, the federal government will have very specific parameters. They already have some in the law, and our partners will be having calls with us and telling us exactly how we can spend it, of which we will be working with our legislator and governor and folks on how we plan to do it. And then we'll have to submit that plan. So that we have the money right now that we're using. I'm not too worried about this new money until we get the official, and then we'll start working on that plan. But it is exciting, and I think it is an acknowledgement to all the work that you all have done and that you do every day. Please note that you don't get that kind of funding because you're doing something that's insignificant. So it's really applause for you all in the field. So I'm really, really proud and excited, and just can't wait for us to think about how we can really make a difference in quality in our state for young children and the services they get. But remember, the federal government does have strings attached, so please note that. Let's see, I'm just going through if there are any other questions. I think that's it, gang. I don't see any more questions in there. I don't want to cut it short today, but if you guys have questions, please type in the chat box. The staff have announced the regulatory check training. We're going to continue those through June. So if your program is struggling with that, I will tell you, Nora, please remind me, but I thought you had told me that you all had like a third or like 300 that came in without the right consent form. I just want people to understand the magnitude of the situation for us. And just to further explain why it's important to us, we get federally audited by the FBI for the use of criminal justice information. So we had an audit last week, not for childcare, but for our other background check, regulatory checks that we do for placement residential, but we have one for childcare too. We had it last year, but they come in and audit us. And if we don't have the right forms, or if we haven't done the right things, then we get a finding. And if we had serious issues, they can stop us from using it, which means the federal government will stop us from getting funding. It's a big issue, guys. So I cannot stress the importance of making sure that we help you guys be successful with that, and that we really want to. So that's why we're doing the training. So I really appreciate those of you who are hopping on that training and getting it. If you need something more one-on-one, let us know. The staff are willing to do that, but we think that's really important. Kim has a question: minimum license requirements, when will those get updated? Should I receive an email outlining the changes, or is there a place? Ashlyn, you want to talk to that?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry I overstepped you there. I'm going to put the link in right now to the chat box where you can find them. It is out on our website. Anytime you need a copy of the minimum licensing requirements, you can find them there. If they're updated, we put it there. There haven't been any changes just recently. Other than the table of contents page numbers, we found an error there. So the table of contents page got changed. So there you go. And Kim, you said yes, but is there a place to see what changes have been made? No, ma'am, not really. That's a great idea. So we'll work on it. It used to be that we would highlight in the manual anything that was changed. So let me take on that question, Kim, and talk with Kelly and see what we can do about that in the future. And so, yes, the last update was changing the table of contents was a little bit off. You remember the change prior to that was the one that removed like the dates in the book that said you needed to have something done by 2015, for instance. Those dates were removed from the book and it was just cleaned up about that. If you have any questions about it, just let us know.
Yeah, and let me mention while we're talking about licensing regs, the licensing regs that we have in Arkansas were lined up to meet the federal requirements for the federal child care block grant in general. So if we don't follow those, programs that don't follow those wouldn't be able to participate in federal child care funding. So just wanted to put that out there in the universe. Sometimes people are not aware of that. We tried to do that so that all of our programs would have the opportunity. We know there are some who choose not to, but we've tried to include that. If we don't, if we have two different systems running, then we have programs that are doing things that are required. And frankly, the federal government, they put in language in that if law licensed programs have to follow like background checks, for example, or regulatory checks, it doesn't matter if you take their funding or not. Our state has to do that for all programs. So if you have questions about some of that, please let us know. But very few changes. They were that was some cleanup on the licensing regs. It wasn't some major redo because we had tried to line them up with the federal child care requirements. So I'm going to go back up. There was something, and I just want to make sure I saw, Dana, you asked about the training. I was talking about regulatory check or background check training. Nora and her team are doing that. And Nora, your next training is this week, right?
It's actually, Tanya, it's Monday, April 5th at noon.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Day, the next training is Monday, April 5th at noon. And we tried to do it at noon for those of you that could hop on a little bit easier during the lunch hour. I'm going to keep going down. It looks like we put some things in. So Sharon, the pandemic requirements are on the website. If you will go to the pandemic requirements, and I know staff are pasting things in the chat box, but if you guys can put those in, it's really the same thing that we've been following, except for the changes that Ashlyn announced. But that will always be on our division website under COVID. You can always find those updated. So if there's any changes, we will announce them on this call. And Ashlyn mentioned one about the vaccine and some changes to the quarantining, but they're always going to be there. If you have any question about that, you can always talk to your licensing staff about that as well. There was a question about who might assist with the required audit process. Kelton Phillips, and if somebody can type Kelton's contact information in, or John Park, either one of those guys can help guide you guys through that. But I know I've referred Kelton to a few folks that he's been able to help in terms of what you will need to do. And he's a great resource for that. I know there's a question about the supplemental payments, and Ashley has notified that all of February has been keyed. If you haven't received your payment yet, it may be in the timing of your banking getting posted to your account. But I don't know exactly when those were completed, Ashley, but all of those have been keyed, and then they'll start working on March next. Ashley or Ashlyn, Kim has a question about field trips, and I know we've had some programs reaching out about summer field trips. I think there's a lot of flexibility there this summer, but certainly you want to reach out. and we can make sure. But Ashley, if you want to talk about that just for a second and kind of give the high level, and then if anybody has any specific situation that we need to staff or look at with any of you, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, so you guys, if you have any field trip questions, anything in general, don't forget, reach out to your licensing specialist. But we have had some field trip questions come through. Our thinking is this, with the transportation requirements being lifted where you guys can go to full capacity on your transportation, we think it's also time to allow some flexibility with the field trips. So what we're asking you all to do is to work with the place that you're going to, like wherever you're taking your field trip. For instance, one I talked to was a bowling alley. And so they worked out where they could keep the group size the same. They also had a plan in place to sanitize the bowling balls every time they went down and came back. They had just a lot of things in place where they can meet all the pandemic requirements, but take the field trip. So we are absolutely willing to talk through with you guys about field trips and what you're doing to make sure that we have everything the way we need so that we're following the pandemic requirements and we don't get ourselves in trouble with not following the pandemic requirements. So just give us a call and we'll be glad to talk you through it. But chances are it's going to be a yes to your field trip if you guys can make sure that you've got some precautions in place.
Thanks, Ashlyn. Do outside activities. Outside's always better. Always better. Carolyn, we do not have a mandate for early childhood childcare staff to take the vaccine. That's not a federal requirement either. So I just reiterate that we are not requiring folks to take the vaccine. We aren't requiring our employees here in the agency. We certainly encourage it, and we certainly encourage you all to consider it, but that really is a personal choice. I think programs, and I've been advised by attorneys, local programs can do, local businesses can do whatever they want to do. That is your business and your right. But here in the Division of Child Care, we are not requiring that that staff take the vaccine. So hope that helps everyone. And I'm just going to keep scrolling down. I'm not sure, Melinda, somebody, I think she's been typing some things in, but I'm not sure, but she says she hasn't received anything. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but we certainly want to help you with that.
I think it's in reference to supplemental payments. Melinda, please reach out to Ashley Green. She will post her email and phone number in the chat.
Thank you, Jay. We actually are doing rates right now, Tiffany. So we are required as part of the block grant, and we're submitting the new plan this year. And so, yes, there is, we are proposing an increase in the rates for vouchers. And certainly related to Better Beginnings level, as that is a federal, they want to see improvements to quality. So we've been working on that. And as we have the public meeting, and probably even at the commission meeting in April, we will be sharing that. And at some point, we'll share that on the call. We still have some internal work that we're doing, but we will have new rates. We will stop paying supplemental whenever we change the rates. So I just want to make sure folks know that, you know, we have supplemental money right now, so we're paying everybody above and beyond the rate. Once we use this 119 million, that's probably when the rate would go into effect, the new rates, which would be an increase for those levels. So, but we absolutely do have that. Randy, thank you. Does anybody know how often the feds update their guidelines for early childhood that might affect our numbers? If that's in reference to the pandemic, I don't think CDC is, a lot of their things are starting to roll back a little bit or dial back a little bit. So if that's what you're referring to, I'm not sure specifically, but if you want to clarify a little bit, if I'm not hitting the right thing, want to make sure I help you with that, or we can talk offline if we need to. But I'm not expecting any new things. If you're talking about the Child Care Development Block Grant, it was reauthorized in 2014. So they have a cycle, and I'm sure it'll be up for reauthorization. I don't know the exact date. I haven't heard anything from our federal partners, but you know, every so many years they do a reauthorization. They did a pretty significant one in 14, so I'm not sure that we'll see the same level of changes, although I have been getting some congressional updates, and there are some congressional bills that are in Congress right now that relate to the Child Care Block Grant. So there could be some things coming, but I haven't seen anything, and our partners haven't mentioned anything yet, but we will keep you guys posted if there is something that is getting ready to come our way. If that's the question. But again, if I've missed the wrong thing, Randy, please check me and clarify. Good question about Better Beginnings. Jennifer, we certainly are going to have those levels, but we actually would be extending to levels 4, 5, and 6. That's in the proposal. We're going to keep moving it up. So there'll be, you know, the levels that we have now plus the next levels. Oh, yes. So thank you, Randy, for clarifying that. Ashlyn, it's really about the pandemic requirements and the 10 people. I think we could work with you on that. We really don't have a 10 people in the room. It's your license capacity. I think it's the group size. And I know there's been a lot of confusion about the group size thing. So maybe we can, yeah, I see several people about the classroom. We don't have a 10 person in a classroom. So if there's confusion about that, it's group size that was, yeah, okay, good. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for clarifying.
I think I'm tracking them, Tanya, and
Okay.
I know that I have heard from some providers, so I think we're all thinking about like what might there be some flexibility on the 10 people to a group. And so right now we are still under the requirements from the Arkansas Department of Health, and that is still listed as one of them. So we need to follow that. Like the other things, any minute that we get a change on that, we will definitely let you all know. I know that does seem to be the most significant one to people right now in terms of the pandemic requirements. So I'll double check with Dr. Thomason and the guys over at the Arkansas Department of Health to see if they can give us any updates or any anticipated change in that. I will take a note to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. You're right here. And so my team will need to work on this. It is currently the CDC rule, but our Department of Health followed their rule. So it kind of gets complicated. But, you know, at the end of this month, the public health agency in this state will no longer have pandemic requirements. So we will have to use the CDC guidelines. But I think this is a really good question for us to follow up on to find out. And I'm going to offer something out right now. If your staff have already been vaccinated, we might be able to entertain. If you have proof of that, we could probably review that and work with you on that. And again, we're not mandating it, but I'm just letting you know, if you had evidence that your staff in a classroom had been vaccinated, I think that would change things. But let us take this one and maybe have an update at the next meeting. We may be in a place, as I said, there are many things that are being reviewed, and because people are getting vaccinated, that may be where they go. If people have been vaccinated, you can do a bigger group size. I don't know that, but I'm telling you, I'd be willing to look at that today in the interim. If the people in the classroom have had their vaccine, I know children haven't, but the adults, they might be willing to do that, but we'll see what they're going to do. And we'll take that on as a question, but you're right. We will not, the Department of Health will no longer provide the guidance to us. It will really be working with or using the Centers for Disease Control guidelines. And sometimes theirs are stricter. So let me just be clear about that. We're trying to stay with what we have and not add more to you guys. We're trying to keep it really simple. So that's my hope, is not to add more requirements to you all, because CDC has some more requirements. We're really trying to keep it simple and try to start lifting or rolling back when we can. So just, you know, we're kind of in that transition. If you all heard the governor's announcement, through the end of the month. So we're still in the ones that we have through March 31st, but there may be some changes to that. So there's a question, and this might be a licensing question.
Melinda, chances are that you probably can, but what you're going to need to do is reach out to your licensing specialist, because they're going to need to look at your floor space. And there's some other things that they may need to talk to you about, such as a health department, fire department. So reach out to your licensing specialist, and they should be able to talk to you about your capacity and the hours that you're providing care.
So I see there's a question about would that also apply to wearing masks? I haven't seen anything, Sharon, from CDC, except that even if you've been vaccinated, we recommend wearing the mask because so many people haven't been. And they also don't know if you can still transmit. You could be asymptomatic and be transmitting it even if you've had the vaccine. But let me just say, because we've had a lot of questions about this, we probably will have a guest from health next time to kind of talk and answer some of these questions. Because I think they're the experts and that's who we've always relied on heavily to work with us. So I appreciate those. You know, at this point, I think it's a good question and maybe we're getting closer to that time and place where we all can take the mask off. We hope so. But at this point, we aren't there. And but we will get some updates on that. And we will definitely get someone from maybe Dr. Tumlinson to get on with us next time, or someone from public health to talk about sort of the CDC regs and you know what to expect there. Good questions, gang. Anything else? Man, I would love to give you guys back a few more minutes of your day because I know you all are super, super busy. Well, I am going to close us out at 12:41. Appreciate you all. I cannot stress enough. I think the acknowledgement with the federal money, and let me just say that's just childcare. I think there's other resources for Department of Ed and many other agencies. So if you're working across many things, there may be other opportunities in terms of funding, but we appreciate everything that you all are doing. I'm proud of the work that we've done over this past year. I hope we're getting closer to a place where we're all going to be able to have some sort of normalcy. It may be new for all of us, but maybe a little more regular than what we've lived through. So look forward to the next call in 2 weeks. Before I let you guys go, this is really important. There are a couple of pieces of legislation I made a note, and Becky, I'm so sorry. I'm going to put that on my list next time. I do want to make sure you all are aware. 2 quick things. House Bill 1708. And let me just first of all say, I am not saying I am for this, I am against this. I'm letting you all know about some legislation that could impact your work. So please note that. House Bill 1708, it is basically a piece of legislation that would require some training about a very specific mental health diagnosis or an issue for children called RAD. And I've talked to our colleagues, and it's a very rare, unusual situation, but it would require all of childcare to have, I think, 3 hours of RAD training. Just letting you all know, if you are interested, you may want to reach out to the sponsor and just visit about that. I am not suggesting that we shouldn't have it or that we should, but want you all to know it is legislation that would impact your work. The other one is House Bill 1098, and it is moving through the chambers. It's already been through the House committee and the House floor. It was in Senate committee this week, and they pulled it back. It is a piece of legislation that is related to sex offender registry, and it would require that if you're an owner, director, or a staff member, and you have someone in your family that is a sex offender, you would have to disclose that to the families that you serve. So that's the way it sits today. There may be some amendments because there were lots of questions about it and concerns about if you're the staff person, it might be someone in your family that you don't even have contact with, and it could be very trauma inducing for you to have to acknowledge that. So I'm just letting you guys know about legislation, not for or against it, but they are 2 pieces of legislation specifically that I have noticed and am tracking and following, you know, that you all need to be aware of. They have implications for our work in early care and education. So I'll try to add that. Hopefully there won't be a lot more as things are kind of winding down, but just wanted you guys to be aware of those. And just appreciate you all again. Sorry about stopping and giving you guys back some time, but hopefully that was quick. So thank you. And we will continue these meetings even after the federal emergency and the state emergency are over. We will keep having these meetings. They are wonderful. We all agree too. We may go to monthly, but we think they're very important. So 2 weeks, see you then, be safe, keep yourself safe, keep your family safe, and see you in 2 weeks.